Yep.
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so we're at mainnet phase 1. And as you can see here that, actually it doesn't look like my screen is sharing. You guys sure? Because I'm not getting any indication I'm sharing. Hang on, let me stop this for 1 second.
You are. We can see it.
It's really freaking me out. Hang on.
That's dangerous. No
I know.
indication they're actually sharing.
Usually it gives me a green, there's the green box, okay. All right. So we're supposed to hit mainnet phase 1 by the end of this month, which was what, yesterday? It's now the 1st. So as you can see here, our scope has continued to increase at the same rate as our finished work is completed. So now we've got a new end date of June 30th. We're now having like really hard conversations in leadership about what we're doing. This is one of those times I have the conversation about, okay, we need to define what success looks like. And we need to be realistic about what we say we're going to deliver and when we're going to deliver it. And usually you can't say both at the same time if there are restrictions on those things, unless you have a clear idea of what success looks like, and both of them line up in that direction. So right now we have more work than we can complete in the amount of allotted time that we've given ourselves. So now we need to take a step back and say, okay, reassess what is it we're trying to accomplish here, and if there are ways that we can manage this scope, either reduce it, do more, work harder, which is probably not the right answer, or do more work, which is probably not the right answer, given that most of us are working really hard to make sure all this stuff happens. Now we need to decide though, okay, what exactly are we doing, and whether or not we can actually reduce the scope overall. That said, you know, it might be, success might look like, okay, we just keep this current trajectory that we're on and we just continue hammering things home. I see that in this particular, in our story points here, there's still a lot of work to be done around the bridge. There's still a ton of work to do around verifying, or like the ETH prover. Let's see what else. There's still some stuff around crypto. And
should we overall consider bridge to be a blocker for phase 1 launch, or something that just happens in parallel?
I think it should be happening in parallel. Like we probably should like separate it off this timeline. But the point here is more that like the people who are working on bridge, you know, they kind of were taken out from the from working on the other stuff here, right? So it's also like you need to understand that part.
Okay. Okay, let's think about it more.
But it's definitely not a blocker on launching phase 1. It's actually probably like it's a requirement that we launch phase 1 before we can launch a bridge. Otherwise, it doesn't make otherwise it doesn't actually make sense to have a fully secure bridge if we're running for validators ourselves.
Well, it makes from the business development perspective, right? Because all those partners sitting and waiting for it to be...
having APIs and everything like fully finalized, obviously, like, you know. But yeah, I think this is 2 independent things.
Good. Sounds like we just made an executive decision to take the ETH bridge and put it in its own chart someplace else. Either be phase 2, maybe, I don't know. I know that's token sales stuff.
It's a parallel to this. It's just the problem is like as soon as we put it parallel, it becomes harder to keep track because the middleware team now is split between 2 different boards.
Yeah. Also, like, yeah. And then we've got contract work that needs to finish too. Let's see that one in here for some reason.
It can be considered to be done. I mean, actually, we can go over it.
Yeah, let's go over it then. Let's just start. But again, this is a time we need to be making really hard decisions about scope and making sure that our definition of success also includes like the current timeline. If we're happy with it, if we're not happy with it, then we needed to change our definitions or change the timeline, one of the 2. So, all right, let's get going. Now let's just go in the usual order, Max.
All right. Let me share. Share my screen. Okay, so one of the things that happened with middleware is that we split the syncs. Where previously we had 2 large syncs, one on Wednesday, one on Friday. And what we did, we split them into smaller syncs, but that are more scoped thematically. So there is a transaction runtime sync. You see they're actually present here by the files in this community repository: transaction runtime, contract runtime, contracts, and bridge. There are 4 syncs that are 30 minutes long that come one after another on Friday. And the goal of this is to reduce the context switch in the middle of the week so that people who are doing engineering, they don't need to interrupt themselves on Wednesday from the work they're doing. Also to reduce the number of people speaking at any given moment during those meetings, because I think the good rule of thumb, as I heard, is 5 people speaking at most at the given meeting. So having the shorter thematic meetings allows that. And at the same time, people who want to just listen to some of those conversations, they can join any of those meetings. Also, we have certain fluidity in terms of what people are working on at any given moment of time. So sometimes people can help with other projects in the middleware team. So depending on that, they will join or not join certain 30-minute meetings on Friday. And one more proposal that I suggested to Kendall is to also have Explorer and RPC as one of those things coming also on Friday, because sometimes we have topics that we discuss on RPC and Explorer relevant to the transaction runtime, like change of the actions or transactions or stuff like that. All right, so because of that, I'm also going to be going through each of the separate documents like this. So the most important one is the contracts. Here we go. As you can see, Evgeny was leading this meeting because he was leading this whole project from the very beginning. Alexei, Willem, and Misha were helping him. So they are through the point of time where most of the stuff is implemented, tested, spec'd out, and security reviewed. We haven't received security audit review report officially yet. There were a couple of findings were immediately addressed. One of them was not a bug, another one was a bug in the runtime, which was fixed. One thing for phase one contract is the voting and transfer pool contract, which was not security audited and not implemented yet. The small piece of work also, Evgeny suggested to reduce the scope of this thing and just make it a transfer pool contract instead of a generic voting contract, which will make the contract simpler. Also because we might not be able to have a security audit for this contract because security audit company is now flooded. They don't have allocation for us. Everyone is launching these days. There are also other contracts that are the contracts work group is going to be working on in the future, but they're not part of the phase one launch. The multi-sig, some changes to the lockup contract and gas only contract, they're part of that. All right. Yes, and now that we are through this major crunch on the security audit of these contracts, Alexei, Willem are actually going to go back to what they were doing before and start closing the other phase one work items that are on the middleware plate right now, which is great because we've been postponing them for several weeks already. So regarding the breach, what we have accomplished recently with the breach is that, well, first we managed to transfer ERC20 from Ethereum to Near on local node. I still haven't tested it on the mainnet, but it's just supposed to work because we tested all the major components of the breach for the transfer of ERC20 from Ethereum to Near. Anton got unblocked on some bugs that we had with hashing in the light client. We had to change the spec and the implementation several times in there. So that created some setback there, but now we are through it. And now he can focus actually on the implementing of the prover, or the verification of near proofs in the Solidity. Evgeny Kapun implemented ED signature verification. There are a couple of bugs left that he said he can fix by the middle of this week. Additionally, Bo and Sandy are kindly helping us with the DevOps, which is really great because this is a multi-component system. There are many moving parts and everything needs to be like correctly implemented. Has to be like we need to be launching the services in production also correctly. Right now it's all kind of hacked together, and they use safe practices for that. So they're both working on that starting the end of last week. Yeah, and we're gonna have the production ready bridge in several weeks, I think. Yeah, so that's all about the bridge. And overall, one more thing to mention is that, as I said, we now have transaction runtime separate from the contract runtime. So again, contract runtime is everything related to the compilation of WASM to native, of other languages to WASM, all the glue code around it, all the tooling like parity WASM utils, all the WASM transformation tools, all this gas injection goes into this scope. And the goal, the short-term goal of the contract runtime, which is I'm gonna open here. The short-term goal is to make sure we're safe on that side, because right now we put a lot of trust into third-party frameworks like Wasmer that we're using, and we should be relying on ourselves above all. And so the goal of the contract runtime is to make sure we're safe on that side, that all this compilation that we're doing, all the ways we're running the WASM, it's all safe. We're not leaking anywhere the specifics of the WASMer into our protocol. And right now it's in phase 1, it's not priority 0, priority 1. As Damon said last meeting, it's maybe like low priority than that. But I think this is gonna become a priority 0, priority 1 once we have phase 1 launch, or sooner than that. Because we need to make sure that, because we're basically running a distributed compiler here, that's what we're doing, and we need to make sure our compilation is actually safe. Currently, Nikolai and Willem are the people who are working on it. And transaction runtime, the meeting had the scope of, we discussed the congestion issue that we already discussed twice during our research meetings. We're gonna proceed with the solution that we agreed on, which is some arithmetics from Bowen, some of the algorithmic design from Evgeny. All this coupled together will help us address it in the short term without minimal changes to our code, which is good. There are some phase 1 issues that needs to be fixed that Evgeny and other people in the middleware team are going to be addressing shortly. And that's it. Oh, and one more thing. We have Vlad Frolov finally traveling from Argentina to Ukraine. We're super happy about it. And yeah, how's it doing, Vlad?
Yeah, yeah, it was a long trip, but yeah, I managed it, and it's good to have myself here. Though the weather actually in Argentina is much better than in Kharkiv right now, so I'm not totally convinced about the right
about transition. Yeah, cool.
So wait, the offsite is officially over?
Yes.
Yeah, I had to close the office in Argentina.
All right, cool.
So we're ready.
Next offsite in Ukraine.
That would be too easy.
All right. Thank you, Max. I love this, the notes and clarification of what our focus is. It's pretty fantastic. Thank you for this. It's really a well-organized team. All right, next up, let's go with, is Kendall. Here you go.
Yep.
Kendall, your turn.
All right. Cool. Let's start with Explorer, actually. Cool. So on the Explorer side, updates on something that was shipped. So if you view transactions or blocks now, you can see an indication of whether or not they're considered final. So that was deployed last week. And on the network indexer side, like another big initiative that's taking a backseat to RPC fuzz testing. So we get to get an update on that. And then once that's done, we can proceed on network indexer again. As Max mentioned on breaking out, like potentially combining Explorer with the part of the middleware sync. So we definitely think it makes sense to have like the RPC and really network indexers that's like fairly similar and worked on by the same team to be rolled into the middleware sync. we decided that at least for the time being, it would still be useful to have an Explorer sync that's more focused on like UI features and issues, because there's still just like quite a few that are there. Currently we have this weekly. We'll likely be moving it to more like bi-weekly in the future. I think we might continue having it weekly until we implement the network indexer, just because there's still a lot to do and still a lot of UI features, but eventually we'll be kind of like paring that down a good bit. Another update that's worth noting here. So we want to start experimenting with more like community fulfilled issues. We kind of discussed like how much of the Explorer does it make sense to do this with. At the very least, there's still a lot of work to do to get it to the point where like, a lot of Explorer issues could really be fulfilled by the community. But as like an early experiment, we're going to start by prioritizing have at least one issue at any given time that's going to be fulfilled by the community. So this is going to start with this kind of map of the nodes, like a geographical map of the nodes issue, which myself, Peter, and Corin are going to work on. And essentially like the goal is to, figure out like what depth of information and what resources we need to give external contributors in order to have them successfully fulfill those. And as we learn more, we'll start to, potentially increase the amount of the Explorer scope that will be fulfilled by the community, but initially starting as an experiment. Other ideas on kind of what we're working on here. So network indexer is something we've talked about for a while. That's like definitely one of the big initiatives, and just, essentially improving performance and the amount of data we can display through that initiative. And now we're kind of working through some UI issues. So we've had some feedback that like basically making it clear that you can actually search for things other than just, well, you can search for everything really, like the main things, accounts, blocks, transactions. We just want to make that clear to the user. And we're also looking into some ways that we can make it easier to filter different transactions and even potentially accounts as there's more network activity. So yeah, that's a quick update on the Explorer. We'll move to Wallet if anybody, any questions?
Quick question, yeah, on Explorer. Yep. We had BetaNet Explorer failing pretty much throughout the weekend. Any feedback there yet?
Yeah, that's a good question. Vlad, have you had a chance to take a look at that?
I guess we are running out of memory there and we need to fix backend. I already filed the issue and I hope Refine can help and fix it, because it's not a hard issue to fix, but it's actually twofold. One is to implement the proper restarts, like boot it up back when it's dead, because right now we are failing on that. It would work like without restarts, but it's still like it's not ideal. And the fix is essentially to avoid those memory leaks that we have.
So what's our commitment to uptime for the Explorer? Right. So I mean, if it was really down all weekend, is this in line with our SLA to ourselves, or should yeah? What's our support?
I mean, I don't think we have a SLA for BetaNet. I mean, the nature of BetaNet is that it is beta, right? So I don't know how much like resources we can put into supporting BetaNet.
Well, I think this is the wrong question. The correct question is, how do we know it failed at the moment of it failing? Because right now we were finding this out again by at least like seeing some of the validators that like it's failing.
Well, and then the second half is does somebody have to fix it, or can everybody sort of kick back for the weekend and wait till Monday?
This is not a kickback and wait thing. No, we should fix it.
Yeah, we have like 150 people staring at it pretty much. And the weekend where most of the validators actually have plenty of time to play with it.
That just means we need to get better at it. And your question is,
well, specifically, so our front end was up. Our like all the other networks were working. It was like a backend of the, so like we need deeper monitoring than we have right now. That's pretty much the point.
Yep.
But again, like monitoring is only half the story, because if it monitors and then everybody gets notified on Saturday that it's down, but like nobody's kind of on duty to fix it, then it doesn't. We haven't closed the loop.
Well, unless I travel, I can bring it up even on Saturdays and Sundays.
I mean, I think we have the. Damon, you were setting up the PagerDuty, right? So right now we just like.
we should have, I'll go back and look and verify everything again, because, you know, we're basically in the point of configuring and making sure everybody's in place for these things.
Yeah, on that side, sorry for interrupting.
Please go ahead, Sandy.
Yeah, so essentially I took that kind of over to see what should we do with the PagerDuty. I discussed it with Bowen, and there was like, one of the things was that PagerDuty is too expensive. So we decided not maybe to use PagerDuty, because it's like $35 per user, and that would be like too much money. So we are looking into integrating with, like with Status Pal should be cheaper. But like we should still figure out how do we do the on-calls. Like we can just do create the on-calls inside of Google Calendar. And then in Google Calendar, you would have like start date and the end date for the on-call, because like we don't really need to use PagerDuty for that. I think it will be, it seems like it will be a waste of money, to be honest. So if that makes sense.
I mean, I think maybe we don't need to discuss the details here.
Yeah, let's, yeah. Point is, we should implement one. Not the tool, but the concept.
Yeah.
But as far as an SLA goes here, I mean, we should try to have 99% uptime, you know, and just stick with it. And whatever we need to do, PagerDuty, whatever, there should be an expectation that BetaNet's going to be up.
I don't fully agree, because, you know, we would spread ourselves too thin between BetaNet, testnet, and mainnet. I don't like. I mean, like, we need to weigh the trade-offs here. Like, should we spend more time, you know, making sure BetaNet is up, or, you know, we should spend more time actually fixing the bugs and building more stuff.
Yeah, so like, to be specific, for BetaNet,
Vlad, please talk. Go ahead, say that again.
I mean, like, keeping BetaNet alive is a part of making sure we don't have bugs. Like, it's an important part to actually keep BetaNet alive first, so that we can release testnet, and then we can release mainnet.
Okay, so there's a few things here. One is there is the network itself, and there is tooling around it. So tooling around it, given it's the same, like we use the same code and we use the same systems, like tooling should work. Because if tooling is breaking on BetaNet, it means it will break the exactly the same way on testnet and mainnet.
Yep.
Like our Explorer will run out of memory exactly the same way on mainnet if we had transactions going through it. That's kind of the point. Keeping BetaNet up, I don't agree that this is a priority, because like what have happened at over the weekend, right, is that a bunch of people's nodes failed because we were out of memory, we were running out of disk. Like the solution there is like we needed to hotfix, hard fork, do a bunch of stuff if we really wanted to keep network up. Like this is not, that did not make sense to do it, given we have a scheduled update coming in a few days.
Was this, wait, was Explorer down or was BetaNet down? And if Explorer
BetaNet was not that, so Explorer was down and multiple times, so like I was rebooting it multiple times, Frol rebooted it a few times as well. BetaNet was failing. It was not down.
Well, what do you mean by failing? Like
failing meaning we had like a bunch of, like about 20% of nodes offline at any point of time.
But like calling that, I mean, I
that's why I used in, not the. It's not, you know, past perfect is past continuous.
Well, it's like we're supposed to tolerate that kind of, you know, behavior, and then I mean we did so.
Well, again, my point is like we had issues. It didn't bring the network down, but we had issues.
Fine.
Again, if we want to maintain like it could have completely stalled. Was exactly like, you know, we walked in a very like thin ice there.
I agree. Yes, I agree.
So the point there is like this is not something we need to fix immediately, because like this is something we collect information and then we fix it, and we're actually rolling out fixes through weekend, by the way, and in coming week. So it's not like the point there is like we don't need to like, you know, hot fix and hard fork there. Like BetaNet is to test and observe these things. In mainnet, we would needed to like immediately put everyone on call, get the meeting with all the validators, you know, hot fix it on the fly, like do this kind of stuff. That is very different amount of involvement between BetaNet and mainnet. Agree?
I agree with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm also going to press like mad to make sure, damn sure that BetaNet never goes down.
Yeah, I mean, we should, yes.
Sorry.
I'm just like, we don't need to like, like, first of all, we cannot actually orchestrate
Also,
the current validators there.
Also, too, I want to get us to a point where, like what Bowen said here, I was fine all the way up until the point where we said, okay, we need to make sure we're not spread too thin. If we're spread too thin, that means I've got some management stuff I need to go take care of. I got to go hire more people. So, like, we can't be spread too thin in a time where we're coming up on, like, a coin sale, that kind of stuff, right? So, all right, moving on. This is good. We'll follow up on the downtime and uptime issue.
That sounds
all
good.
right. Nick, Kendall, were you finished, or do you have more?
No, just let me talk about Wallet real quick, because that's yeah, I was actually going to touch on Explore very briefly, and then may focus on Wallet, but we can keep it quick. So this is like the release for Wallet. So this is from the token sale basically. So this is going to take us through July 1st, which is like about 2 weeks before the token sale that we're targeting. The idea is that can give us some time to like really battle test this, because holding real money obviously pretty serious. So a couple updates on what we shipped. So last week we shipped email and phone verification. So if you try to add that, you'll now notice that you have to confirm with the code to confirm you actually have access to that phone number or email first. And then we shipped the locked token information. You'll now see some information about like an active balance versus a total balance if you try to send basically any transaction that involves Near. Please give that a look and provide any feedback if you have some. So yeah, this is the release that we're focused on right now. Damon, I know you'll probably ask about estimations. We're talking about that this week in our wallet sync on Wednesday. So we should have some more updates on at least what our plan is for that. You can see here the P1s are actually currently in progress. They're effectively just the things that all these are considered have to do by the token sale. The P1s are just the slightly higher priority and essentially blocking some other things. So this is like the limited access key support, which means that accounts will not have full access keys. They'll have limited access keys and be operating through like almost like a whitelisted set of actions and some other things. Two-factor authentication and handling errors. So the timeout error we heard was fixed on the Near Core side, but we're still experiencing them quite a bit, and so we need to handle those on the wallet side now. And then also ledger support, which is getting pretty close to being delivered. You'll probably see more about that later this week, early next week. One thing that's been brought up, I'll probably talk about this more at all hands, is can we use the wallet before the token sale? The answer is potentially. This is something we also need to discuss in our wallet sync this week. The biggest challenge is, we're sort of like designing this like for 2FA to be like a major part, almost like users will need to choose between Ledger or 2FA. And so 2FA will not quite be done, it will not be done in the next week or two. And we were hoping to maybe, or at least there are some people on the team who want to get this in the hands of users in that time frame. I don't know that we'll be able to get that done just like design-wise and flow-wise without some like potentially disruptive changes that would occur to users that got that beforehand, but we can discuss that later. So just if anybody had questions in that vein, that's sort of the way we're thinking about it. Any questions on the wallet side?
Yeah, regarding the error handling, like it's not by fix on the Near Core side. What this meant is that we introduced like new RPC endpoint so that you can check whether transaction is still valid and so on. And it's not like I mean that timeout error like cannot be fixed like on like that error it's not like really fixable because it means that it's not able to get.
The question is like, are timeouts actually like RPC timeouts now? Because before we were under the impression that timeouts could mean like transaction or like a few different things. So that's more the question, because the strategy for us to handle timeouts is to basically just start polling for the transaction status.
Well, yeah, as I said, like if timeout happens, you should first check if the transaction is still valid through like the new RPC, and then if it's still valid, then it means probably still waiting to be processed.
Okay.
So wait, why not can it check this for us and return the error properly?
It should be, yeah. It should be.
Why not return error properly? Like how it makes sense?
They should be bidirectional.
Well, I mean, because it doesn't know, like it hasn't finished yet.
But I mean, but like it can respond, and next response, you just said that like we can make a next response to determine if transaction is valid. Why not cannot do it itself?
Well, so you suggest packaging them together?
Well, I mean, like I suggest that if we return timeout error, it actually means timeout error, but not means something else.
We could probably take this conversation someplace.
Like, well,
Yeah,
we can
sense.
work around, of course, but then like we shouldn't consider it fixed in your core side.
Okay, well, yeah, let's offline this, but yeah, we should definitely continue that conversation because that's pretty important. Any other questions?
I think in general, we'd better to have a subscription interface for transaction status.
That is a good idea. What would that look like implementation wise on the NERCO side and like timing wise?
I mean, like there is a HTTP events, for example.
So this discussion was already like, we touched this topic very deeply with Lateralov, and he did some research about that. And I think this topic is very like broad. It's gonna take a lot of time to discuss it. So let's actually have an RPC meeting about it. And Lateralov, I'm sure he has a lot to say about that. I'll include in the timeouts.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Kendall. Alex, you want to go?
Sure. Okay, so what's been happening? So we made quite a bit of progress last week. I will cover the highlights. We have a new infrastructure, which we call MockNet. We can now easily deploy a custom build across a preset cluster on Google Cloud. So that allows running tests. It will allow running tests for upgradability. It will allow running more complex nightly tests, which would be hard to do spinning up new nodes that would require a predefined cluster, etc. So that is very exciting. I didn't get a chance yet to play with it, but I think that will enable us to do significantly more interesting tests. Then we working with the bridge team, and by we I mean Bowen, added actual light client proofs. So before we had light client blocks for the light client to sync, but there was no way to actually use the hashes that are stored in it to do any proofs. So now we have a spec, we have RPC endpoints, we have Python code that is an example code of the verification. So at this point in time, for the first time, Near is actually light clients friendly. So one can actually go and implement a fully functional light client. Then we had a pretty major issue with garbage collection in chunks. We did not account for the fact that the same chunk can be included in multiple blocks and a couple other things. So that has been addressed. We're still struggling with with storage issues. There are multiple. There are some failures. We don't know how many of them are the same, how many of them are different. Some of them are reproducible. So that is one of the major efforts right now to figure all of them out and fix them. And so on the last thing I said that we have two major issues. One is storage issues, one is Actix. So with Actix, we actually figured out it was misconfigured. At least that's my understanding of what's been happening. And so with the proper configuration, we have a new build. I didn't play with it yet, so we will see if at least the issues that we knew how to reproduce are fixed when Actix is properly configured. Cool. Finally, we had some very weird regressions in Nightly in the last couple of weeks. Both of them are coming from very interesting, from unexpected places. One of them was, I think one of the funniest one is Frol removed some unused dependencies from the build. Literally, if you look at the PR, the only thing that changed is some dependencies were removed. And after that change, some tests started failing. And before the change, they don't fail. I don't know what's the progress there, but that's one of the interesting directions in fixing Nightly.
The progress there is that I discovered that it's not the removal of the dependencies, but actually updates of some other dependencies that it triggered. So cargo lock was updated and some of the dependencies. And I guess Actix is the like main blame there, in my opinion. But well, it's yet to be.
I see.
Checked. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, Actix never fails to deliver. Cool. Okay, so the last interesting question or topic to discuss is, so last week I started the discussion around completely rewriting syncing. We have our sync initially was written for the old version of Near, which was using some longest chain consensus without any finality gadget. It was taking practically verbatim from Green, though from my understanding, it was not copy pasted. It was actually just heavily influenced. And with our current code base, there are many issues with the existing syncing. One of them is that the block sync is very slow, and we still don't know why it happens. Sometimes it stalls, or maybe it doesn't stall. Maybe it continues operating, but it's just so slow that the network runs away from it. As Bowen pointed out, headers are pretty large, and because we produce one header per second, after a very short amount of time, we will have hundreds of gigabytes of headers. By short, I mean like several months, right? So we have a lower bound, or rather upper bound, in terms of time that we have to fix syncing. It's several months, but I'm actually proposing to fix syncing now. So I'm proposing to write a spec and build syncing either for phase 1 or phase 2, which will obviously delay them further, but will remove problems in the future. Curious if people have major concerns against doing that, or if anyone.
Well, I think we should at least do it after phase 1. Like I mean, that thing alone will take a pretty long time to test because it's a pretty major change. You don't considering how much time we have spent to test our current syncing code. You know, yeah, I think it will take.
Do we have sufficient certainty that the existing sync will not let us down when we launch phase 1?
I mean, we have some confidence. Like, I mean, block syncs are slow, it's known, but it sort of works, even though it's slow. It just like, yeah. I think it mostly works.
Okay, if you have confidence in syncing. So my primary reason I wanted to do it sooner than later is that I personally do not have a slightest belief that our syncing will work when we launch to the public. But your confidence makes me more confident.
Well, I mean, we have been running current syncing code with BetaNet, right? We have like 83 validators, 150 nodes right now. And yes, they do have problems from time to time. So it's not like, it's definitely not working great, but it is working.
But what sort of problems? Is it just slow, or is it like, do we actually have issues like where
sometimes people sometimes people get stuck, and like I've seen people get stuck and then restart node and sync. So yes, I mean, the state machine there sometimes has issues, but I mean, one thing is like the Actix fix should at least address some of the like performance issues we've observed.
Yeah, we definitely should address the potential attack by initiating multiple state syncs. I think we're already working on that and have made progress. So yeah, I think we should be fine in terms of that.
So the syncing I propose actually does not change state sync. So that.
I see. So we still have to fix that. Yes.
Yeah, that problem would still exist. So that we need to fix. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Then I will postpone it yet. I will still work on the spec. I will publish a spec but I guess on the slower schedule than I was planning to. But let's postpone syncing until after phase 1. But after phase 1, I suggest we do it immediately. Because that's, I think that's
yes, we should. Yeah, we should start immediately because then there's a ticking clock. Like it's incumbent on us. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, thank you, Alex.
I do want to mention on the chain side also upgradability. So I mean, it's still a PR, but as soon as it gets merged, just like heads up to everyone who is touching near core is that now you will need to write backward compatible code.
I I suggest we do not merge the PR until we actually enforce, or like at the same time we enforce the backward compatibility test.
So my suggestion is we merge the PR and then right after we enforce backward compatibility test.
Okay, yeah, we should do them like almost in at the same time, I think.
What do you mean by enforcing?
Sure. As long as nobody can squeeze in a commit which breaks backward compatibility, then for a month we cannot fix the test. I'm fine with that.
Oh, we'll roll back that commit. But by enforcing max means CI will fail if right now we run backward compatibility test and we don't fail CI if that test fail.
What's the argument against failing the?
Because we still have phase 1 issues in middleware that will break protocol, and we don't want to write them in backwards compatible way because it will make their development much slower.
Well, so we do need to test upgradability in the beta net first before rolling it out. So we need some upgrades.
But look, we just discussed that we have a scope creep in our phase 1 burnout chart, right? If we have a bunch of phase 1 issues for middleware that will change the protocol. If we say that now we need to be implemented backwards compatible way, you take each of them and add a multiplier of, I don't know how many more work hours they're actually going to take to implement. Like that's the scope creep.
Well,
like
we need to decide on this, but
we can wait. I mean, but that's what it sounds like the right meeting to discuss it. Like I suggest we postpone the upgradability and enforce upgradability for now. We merge all these phase 1 issues that we have for middleware, and then we create a separate issue, like some test issue, some test change which we use to actually test this backwards compatibility. Like let's not delay the current phase 1 work in the middleware through that.
Well, the idea is to have upgradability before phase 1 so that validators can actually upgrade. So that we don't have to do hard fork on mainnet. I mean, doing hard fork on mainnet, it can be very undesirable. So
So I'm saying let's have it before the phase 1 launch, but let's not convert every single middleware issue that currently touches the protocol into the more difficult issue, which requires backwards compatibility.
Then we need a very clear estimate.
I think
how much time.
Should get a list of see the issues that must be fixed before so that we can have a better understanding.
And we should prioritize them above everything else. All protocol changes should come in first, and then we should stop.
Okay, good. Let's do that.
Yep, I was going to ask about upgradability after Peter, but it sounds like we just hit it. Okay, Peter, you want to go next?
Sure. The main thing is pretty much the same as last week. We're doing this big push on partner engineering as the priority. So the embedding experiment is going on. That means Mike is working with Flux and actually digging in their code base. 2 main outcomes are we're trying to get feedback on our tooling our libraries in general. And then also we're hoping we can get an app deployed on mainnet as soon as possible. So we need to learn a lot in order to do that. Actual features stuff that we're working on. We're going to be working on a way to do data migration. So if you're on testnet and you want to maintain state while you deploy to mainnet, this is a requirement people have asked about. And we've also got, if anyone asks you in this meeting, or if anyone is curious in this meeting, something really important is we have really thorough NFT and FT, meaning non-fungible token and fungible token implementations of our finished standards. There's 2 places you can find them. One is in the Near Examples organization. So this is not a repo in Near protocol. I recommend following this if you want to see sort of canonical examples of our code. So it's near-examples/NFT, near-examples/FT. I can link those in the chat. Those are pretty much what we're going to be building off of for when people want to use non-fungible tokens or fungible tokens in whatever implementation they have. So those are the high-level updates. And that's what's coming down the pipe. Mainly just more push on the mainnet migration stuff.
Those NFTs implemented in assembly script?
We have assembly script and Rust for everything. Yeah. Oh, actually, thanks for bringing that up, Max. They're also, we want to make sure there's a copy in the initial contracts repo as well. But yeah, Rust and assembly script
with tests.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I have. If anyone's got
questions. Thank you, Peter. Any questions for Peter? All right, again, my usual speech. If you're not working on something phase one, you need to justify it. And it sounds like there are a few things out there around upgradability we need to deal with this week. So let's make sure that happens too. Please make sure you go to your async stand-ups and give your updates if you're part of engineering here. It's really important for our sync issues, like making sure we're all communicating. I check those all the time and constantly. So even for other teams other than engineering, so it really helps overall. Are there anything else? Is there anything else that people want to talk about today? Okay, all right, that's it. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful, wonderful Monday. See you in the next one.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.